Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. Today will be the long-awaited, well for me at least, it's long-awaited. I've been wanting to do this video for quite a while at this point. Long-awaited review on the Pinky Rose Bright Lights palette. So far I have done 4 tutorials on this palette and I figured it was time to do a review on it, so this is going to be the review of the palette. I'm going to go through each and every color in this palette. I'm going to do some swatches. I'm going to tell you my experience. And at the last but not least, I'll tell you if I recommend this palette or not. Because I do think that there's some pros and cons to this palette depending on what kind of a makeup person you are. And I want to be able to get into all those points in this video. So if you want to see my review, my full review on this palette, then of course keep on watching. So let me just give you a little bit of a backstory as to how I got this palette. I saw this palette on a whole bunch of smaller YouTubers videos and I was so intrigued, but this palette kept getting like really sold out because everyone was really liking it, so I had to like sign up for some email notifications, and when I got notified that the palette was coming back in stock, I bought that thing. I think I bought it in Ukraine. Yeah, that's how much I wanted this palette. I think it was either in Ukraine or right when I got back, but I think it might have been in Ukraine. But just look at this palette. Just look at the color story. The color story is something I absolutely love. So yeah, I got this palette and I right away started playing with it. So something that you notice, of course, right off the bat is that there are 14 shades in this palette. Out of those 14 shades, 3 of them are pressed glitters. Those include Dazzle, Cupcake, and Tickle, and 2 of them are shimmery metallic kind of colors, which includes Glitz and Boom, and then everything else in this palette is matte. I'm going to compare this palette's color story to some palettes that you might already be familiar with, even if you're not very much into color. First of all, let's talk about the Masquerade palette. So this is a palette that is quite beat up. I love it very much, and as you can see, it has a beautiful selection of shades, but these 2 rows right here are neutrals, and then the top 2 rows are colorful shadows. But if you look closely, then you will notice that out of the 2 rows of colors in this section of the palette, only 1 color is a matte, and that is this color right here. Each and every other color is a metallic. And if you look at the Magic palette, which is also something that I absolutely love, you see that there are a lot of beautiful, colorful shades, but most of the colorful shades in this palette, except for maybe these 2 colors and these 2 colors, are metallics. So that is something that I find is quite common in a lot of colorful palettes. You do get some beautiful, colorful colors in a lot of palettes, but it's not really often that you come across a palette with a selection of really beautiful colors, and the majority of those happen to be matte. So this is something that I really was gravitating towards because I noticed that sometimes if I wanted to do a look, I was a little bit limited in the color options that I had in other palettes. So that's why I bought this palette. So I'm going to really quickly get into the swatches. I want to just do it a little bit differently since I want to be able to like live swatch in front of you, and I actually don't have time to do like an insert where I show you swatches, so I just want to swatch everything live. So I'm going to go kind of like haphazardly around the palette, and I'm sorry if you don't like that, but it's just, that's the way it's going to be. First, I'd like to swatch Lit, and this is actually the color that I'm wearing in my crease today. It's not very like obvious since I was blending it out quite a bit, but this is a matte yellow that I was very excited to try because look at how bright and beautiful that is. It is really, really nice, and I just love using it either in my crease, and I've also used it in my lower lash line. It's just a really nice color and it really brightens up a lot of makeup looks. Then I have Brulee, which is this color right here. I'm going very random around this palette, but that's because I'm swatching all the colors right here, right now, and I don't want to make my fingers dirty, you know, so I'm kind of going like light to dark, so forgive me if this is a little bit confusing, but hopefully you guys will be okay with that. But this is Brulee, and this is actually the only color in this entire palette that I haven't used on my eyes, and that's just because of the way I do my makeup. A lot of times people like to use a transition color, which is basically like a wash of color that you're supposed to put on your eyes first before starting the majority of your makeup look, right? So you're supposed to take a fluffy brush, dip it into a transition color, which in this palette is this right here, and you're supposed to put it in your crease. And I used to do that a lot, but then I realized that if I'm doing a colorful makeup look, I get more impact and it's easier to make the colors pop if I just pack on a bold color like just below my crease. So that's the way I just do my makeup. So in general, I don't really use a shade like this, and I don't really use it as a transition color. I tend to use a lot of bright, bold colors right off the bat whenever I'm doing a colorful makeup look. So when I'm using this palette, this shade just doesn't fit into whatever look I'm doing. However, that for me is just my preference. I feel like everyone has their own method when they're doing their makeup, so you don't need to like not use this color. I mean, you can use it. It's just I don't need it, so I don't use it. So moving on, I have Dreamsicle. This is one of my favorite colors. It is so nice. I love using this as like a starter color. I definitely have used this in a lot of makeup looks that I've done with this palette. I ended up using this in my inner corner, I think a few videos ago, and that was a beautiful look. This was such a beautiful color to be in my inner corner, and yes, it is a matte, so you might be wondering why I put it in my inner corner. I mean, I just like to experiment a lot, and this works really well, especially when you layer it. It's just such a nice color, very blendable. All the mattes in this palette are really quite blendable, and they manage to maintain their pigmentation when you're blending them out. So moving on, I have Tiki, which is another favorite color of mine. This is like somewhere between a pink and a red, but it's definitely not too pink and not too red either. It's just like a really interesting color. It kind of matches my dress today, but it's just such a beautiful color. And yeah, that's what it looks like right here, like very smooth. I just did it once. I didn't have to blend the colors into my arm. Then I have Becky, which is this color right here. This is a very hot magenta pink. I actually like surprised myself by not using this color as much as I was expecting. I was expecting to use this color quite heavily, and it does swatch beautifully, but honestly, like I don't use it as much. I probably should be using it more often because it is so pretty and I love it. So yeah, that's Becky. Then I have Pop Rocks, and I used Pop Rocks in my eyeshadow today, but I kind of covered it up with glitter, so I can't really see it. But this is a beautiful purple shade, and it's just so yummy. It is so beautiful. That was a very messy swatch. I'm very sorry. Let me fix that. I'm not good at swatching. I don't really like swatching, really, but like I do like seeing reviews with swatches. I feel like that completes it, so that's why whenever I'm doing a review, I like to do swatches, even though it's not my favorite thing in the world. But this is a beautiful matte purple, and oh, this is such like a nice gradient, you know? I love it. So next up, let's go to this end of the palette where I have a lot of beautiful like matte greeny blue colors. First up is Cloud. This is a beautiful color. It's kind of like a baby blue matte, and well, that's what it is. But as you can see, swatches beautifully, and it goes on the eyes quite beautifully as well. I do have to say that with the mattes, if you want to get like the highest amount of pigmentation, I would definitely suggest taking like a small dense brush and just packing the color on first onto your eyes and then blending it out. I have realized that that kind of gives me the most pigmentation, and that really makes my eye looks really look impactful. So yeah, whenever I'm doing looks with this palette, I always try to pack my eyeshadow and then blend it out. And you notice in my tutorials that I've done with this palette that I just really try and pack and then blend. So moving on, I have Punky, which is this color right here. This is a turquoise, and have I used it today? No, I did not. But it is a really beautiful color. Why am I talking like that? But there it is. As you can see, I love, like, honestly, this is beautiful for me. This is Smash. Oh boy, this is what I used on my lower lash line today, and I actually blended it out quite a bit, so it's not like super high impact, but I don't own a color like this at all. Like this, oh, Oh, this is such a beautiful color. This is the color my room used to be when I was a kid, like when I was like a little kid. Yeah, this was the color of my room. That's what it reminds me of. But it is a beautiful color and I love using it. I think it's one of the most used shades in this palette actually. So yes, this is definitely one of my favorites. So far I've swatched every single matte color in this palette. So next I want to go with some shimmers. So there are not a lot of shimmers in this palette. Like I said, I feel like that's kind of a pro in my book since I am able to create a lot more unique shades and I am able to get a lot of use out of this palette because most of the shades are mattes. But the two shimmers in this palette, oh boy, how sexy. They are so good. This is the first one. This is called Boom. And this, like, okay, this is a color that I absolutely love using. And if you look at how it swatches, it doesn't swatch super metallic. So I have been able to get away with using this as a defining shade, like particularly in my outer corner. Especially today, I have used it in my outer corner and a little bit in my inner corner as well to create like a halo eye effect. So I have been able to use it as a defining shade because it really doesn't look too metallic on the eyes. I mean, there is like a nice sheen to it, as you can see. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it does blend out really nicely. And yes, you can get away with using this as a color to define your eye look. I really like it a lot. Let's just layer it actually to see how, yeah, that is really beautiful when it's layered. I mean, it is really pigmented, but sometimes I like to like really layer a shadow to like really make it look like, you know, all these colors are pigmented, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I just like to do that. Okay, so moving on to the other color in this palette that happens to be a shimmery metallic. This one is the one I'm wearing in my inner corners today. It is a great deal more metallic than Boom, and it happens to be Glitz. This is like a very light turquoise color. It is beautiful as an inner corner highlight. I kind of want to try using this all over my lid. I haven't tried that, but it is quite beautiful and I'm kind of intrigued. I think it would be fun to just like put this all over my lid and see what happens. But it is a beautiful color, especially when it's wet. Then it's like, ooh, you know, it's really nice. So anyway, moving on, I have the pressed glitters in this eyeshadow palette right now. I have Dazzle, Cupcake, and Tickle. I should probably put these glitters on my fingers so you can see what they look like, because if you put a glitter on your fingers, it will look pretty much the same way as it will look if you basically pack it on your eye, if that makes any sense. So let's just put Dazzle on my finger. Okay, Cupcake. Cupcake is my most used glitter from this palette actually. And then this color is called Tickle. So this is what the glitters look like. As you can see, they're very, very pretty. I love using them pretty often. Another important thing I want to mention about these glitters is that no, these glitters are not oversprays. I find a surprisingly common thing, especially with cheaper brands, is that they will do like a very weird glitter formula where they will have like the glitter glue, like the sticky adhesive, and they will mix it in with like just a few flecks of glitter. They'll press it in the pan and then they'll like pile on like a little bit of loose glitter on top. So the first time when you like touch the glitter, it looks super high impact, but then like gradually when you start using it more and more, you realize it's just an overspray. With this, that is not the case. I have used these glitters very often, so I can tell you very confidently that these are not oversprays. These are the same consistency throughout the entire pan. Another thing that I think is also a plus is the fact that almost every single color in this palette is a lighter, brighter, more neon looking color. Because something that I have noticed with a lot of other makeup brands when it came to really colorful shadows is that they either are all shimmery shadows or they are mid-tones. These are really bright, really like just popping and really just matte, and the quality is really nice as well. I said really a lot. I need a better vocabulary, but you get my picture. I think that this is a really good palette. Okay, so who would I recommend this palette to? I would definitely recommend this palette to someone who is already well versed in color and who's already interested in color. Because if you are a beginner using colorful makeup, you might feel a little intimidated by this palette, because I see so many declutters where people are like holding up a colorful palette and they're like, I bought this because I really liked it, I really liked what this looked like, but I never use it. Because if you're a neutral wearer, you probably won't, because this will probably end up being the palette that you're gonna be like, oh yeah, it looks so pretty and I'm gonna use it someday but not today. So that's just where I stand. I would suggest getting this palette if you like it. I mean, it's your own business, but if I was someone who loves neutrals, I would probably start off with maybe a Juvia's Place Masquerade palette, because this palette has a lot of neutrals and it has a lot of color. So you don't feel necessarily as intimidated by something like this palette as you would with this palette, even though I love both palettes so much, and I do think that this palette really just upped my makeup game so much. But before you buy anything, just think about if you really will be using it, because I use this palette a ton, but I use colorful makeup a ton. So that's just my like little spill on this palette. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about this palette. Be sure to check out my other videos using this palette. I've done so many tutorials and I've worked really hard on them, so check them out if you're interested. I will link them, like I said, in the cards or down below in the description box, or of course they are on my channel, so check me out on there. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys.